All right, so we're going to talk about the Phillips curve. This is especially for those of you that were on Kairos, but this is a good review. Everything comes back to the ASAD graph, okay? So that's never going to leave us. So this is just a different way of representing recession, expansion, stagflation, supply side economics. So the Phillips curve is the relationship between inflation and unemployment. It's an inverse relationship in the short run, okay? There's also the long run Phillips curve, which is a vertical line right at the natural rate of unemployment, okay? I'm not gonna focus too much on that. It's there, but we just wanna focus on the short run Phillips curve, much like we tend to focus on short run aggregate supply on the aggregate supply, aggregate demand graph. So let's say we're in a period of recession, right? Recession is gonna have high unemployment, 8% unemployment, 10%, something like that. There's gonna be lower inflation during that. Why? Well, there's less demand for goods, less upward pressure on wages, which helps to keep prices down. And this would be a dot on this chart representing a recession. Conversely, if we have a period of expansion, we're going to have low unemployment, below the 5% natural rate of unemployment. So remember, full employment does not mean everybody has a job. It just means there's no cyclical unemployment. We can actually get past, all right, this 5% unemployment when things are really good. Trump added about 3.3% in a period of expansion. And typically, this hasn't been happening recently in history, but there's typically higher inflation. So we would have that dot there in expansion. And then equilibrium in general is considered 5% unemployment, 3% inflation. Okay, and then we go back to our second grade exercise of connect the dots, and we have our short run Phillips curve. Okay. All right, and we're going to call this the SRPC. And a way to remember this is Philip enjoys eating ravioli. Okay. Philip, expansion, equilibrium, recession. Please don't do the Fenwick technique of remembering the saying and then forgetting what the letters represent. Okay. You should be able to understand that this is equilibrium, because if I draw in the long run Phillips curve, that's going to go right through the equilibrium there. Okay? How do we get to expansion? Well, that's just like on the ASAD graph, an increase in aggregate demand. Okay? Now, remember, on the ASAD graph, the increase in aggregate demand moves everything to the right because it represents real GDP, employment, income, and output. Well, this represents unemployment, so if it goes to the right on the ASAD graph, it goes to the left on this graph. Okay, but it still goes up because price level and inflation are essentially the same thing. All right, and here, this would be a decrease in aggregate demand again. A decrease in aggregate demand moves left on the ASAD graph, which means it moves right on this graph. Okay, how do I remember that we're going along the Phillips curve? Well, the D in aggregate demand stands for diagonal. We move diagonally with that. Just keeping an eye on the time. I'm at 4:07, 4:08, 4:09. Fantastic. Get it? They're both cleaners. Don't laugh. You're not allowed to laugh. Okay. So we have that set up right there. Well, you're asking yourself, hey, Mr. Gallo, what happens if there's a change in aggregate supply? Because sometimes inflation goes up and unemployment also goes up. The worst of both worlds, right? That's stagflation, right? If we take a look at the ASAD graph here, a decrease in aggregate supply is going to lead to a higher price level and higher unemployment. Well, that's not represented on this diagonal. So that is a shift in the short run Phillips curve. And we get stagflation coaster. Because to me, this looks like a little roller coaster with the tracks there. Okay, some people say it looks like a slide. Well, aggregate supply, this is an aggregate supply decrease. Okay. Aggregate supply, the S in supply stands for shift. The whole SRPC, short run Phillips curve, shifts to the right. And just remember, stagflation, this is bad. This is Jimmy Carter, Richard Nixon bill, okay? High unemployment, high inflation, everybody's miserable, okay? So remember, we tend to think going to the right is good. Up and to the right on the Phillips curve is disaster, okay? Okay, so Jimmy Carter was president, we had stagflation. Ronald Reagan came in, lowered corporate taxes, we had improvements in technology, we had lower cost of oil, less government regulations, supply side economics. Well, an increase in aggregate supply sends us into Happyville over here. Short run Phillips curve comes over here, and we have supply side economics. This is Reagan, and I'm going to put in here Barack Obama, even though his policies aren't considered supply side. He had low unemployment and low inflation. Okay, so this again, this would be an increase in aggregate supply, which shifts this graph to the right, but this graph to the left because it represents unemployment as opposed to employment. I would put in here pre-pandemic Trump, but that takes up too many words. Okay, so those are the four events and how they're represented. The long run Phillips curve is just stuck here, okay? All right, so you don't have to worry too much about that for this upcoming quiz. Maybe we'll talk about how the Phillips curve comes back there in the long run, but not quite yet. Okay, so you have aggregate demand increase, aggregate demand decrease, aggregate supply decrease is Phillips curve moves this way, aggregate supply increase, Phillips curve moves this way. I just wanted to say one final note before checking out here. Expanding my social media presence. I've hired a full-time social media coordinator, and I just wanted to introduce my full-time social media coordinator. He's going to be taking over all of those responsibilities.
All right, guys, remember, like and subscribe on the video. We want to get at least 10 likes every video from here to the end of the year. And don't forget, sub count, end of March, 50 subscribers. Look at that subscribe button. Did you press it? How about now? All right, good.
Okay, and his name is Caden Giersdorf, and now you know why I was wearing a mask the whole time. See, my jokes were so funny, he was like almost hysterically laughing, but I told him, you'll go back and watch the video over again. I said, don't laugh, I was talking to him. Thank you, Caden. I'm gonna be going viral. You know, I gotta be careful what I say. There's millions of people are gonna be seeing this. I've heard rumors that I'm up to like 26 subscribers.
27.
27? Oh my God. You're supposed to tell me every time I get a new one. All right, thanks everybody.